Hello, my name is Robbie Tulip. Happy Christmas. This is a talk about the uh, nativity of Jesus Christ and the uh, mythology from the Bible that explains the nativity. So, I'd like to share with you the um, site from Skygazer 4.5, which looks at the uh, sky from Jerusalem at the time that the Bible gives us the birth of Jesus Christ. So 1 BC, it's Christmas at midnight. And uh, this is a diagram of the sky looking south from Jerusalem at dusk. And what I'm going to do is just start the sky is slowly moving, and what's happening here is that the sun is setting, and in the west here, and the Milky Way appears across the course of the heavens, and the stars are now coming out, and a time down here is shown as 6 p.m. Now, what I'd like to show is that some of the constellations that we see here um, across along the celestial equator, we see the constellation of Orion has risen in the east and is headed towards the west, and below the constellation of Orion is Sirius, the dog star, the brightest star in the sky. Now, I'm just going to stop this for a sec and have a look at what the Bible tells us about this story. And this is from the Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 2, verses 9, where the Magi, the Bible doesn't say there were three, but it says the Magi, they had come from the east and they'd seen his star in the east, and the star went ahead of them until it stood over the place where the child was. Now, I'm going to take this as a sort of treasure hunt and say, okay, let's use this verse as something that is an actual description of what people could see in the sky. So we're going to keep looking at the sky and we're going to ask what happens. So let's just get going again. And they're slowly making their way. I can probably speed it up a bit, but I'd like to just point out a couple of things here. We see here, this point, that's where the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic or the zodiac, crosses the celestial equator. And we can see that at the time of the birth of Christ in the Bible story, this X in the sky was exactly lined up with what's called the first fish of Pisces. Now, since that time, due to something called the precession of the equinox, this X in the sky has been slowly moving back. So now it's back around here at the point that's just setting in the west in our slowly moving picture. Now, let's get back to our nativity story. We see the belt of Orion, which I'd like to call the Three Kings, which is a traditional story, is now reaching this green line, which is the meridian. That's the line that connects north and south through the zenith point at the top of the sky. And it continues to look back towards Sirius, the star in the east. And now what's happening here? Remember that our Bible verse had said it stood over the place where the child was. So what do we see immediately underneath Sirius that's as we get towards midnight on Christmas night on 1 BC, we could have gone for 4 BC and we would have had that nice conjunction between the planet Saturn and Jupiter. But we're sticking with 1 BC, which is the convention, and of course there's no year zero in the Christian calendar. Now, Sirius has gone past the meridian line. Um, uh, the three kings are moving west, and this big constellation is coming up on the southern horizon. This constellation is called Argo, the ship. Now, because it's so big, it was split up by modern astronomers into three constellations, and we've got the sails and the deck and the keel. So the bright star here is Canopus, and um, as you can see, Canopus and Sirius make a line pointing towards the south. Now, look, we've gone past midnight, so Jesus is already born uh, to the Virgin Mary in the story, and I'd like to just ask you to see this line from the three stars of Orion's belt, El-Nitak, El-Nilam, and Mintaka, through Sirius down to the deck of the Argo. Now, you might notice that there's a similarity between the name Argo and the word ark. And indeed, this constellation was known as Noah's Ark. But one of the problems that we have is that the historical records of ancient constellations that weren't visible from Europe, such as this. Now, what I'm going to do is we're looking here from Jerusalem, and I'm just going to change the location. And instead of Jerusalem, let's see what happens if we view this from Athens in Greece. Now, the situation now is that you can see that this constellation is never completely comes above the sky, above the horizon. And when something is so close to the horizon, it's very hard to see. We see the bright star Canopus from Athens 2,000 years ago was barely visible at the southern horizon at its highest point. So, so this is a constellation which was known in um, Jerusalem, in Egypt, but not known in Greece. So, the uh, if we say that this ship constellation, now I'm going to make another change, and I'm going to switch it to Sydney, just to see what it's like when from where I live in Canberra in Australia, and the but Sydney's the nearest big city. It's the middle of the day here, so we'll just change the time quite quickly, and well, there we are. Okay, and now just we'll go back to our 10-second speed, and this is what we see from here in Australia. The as the um, Orion's belt uh, moves up, we see the constellation of Argo very clearly from here in Australia. Now, my view, having watched this in the sky for many years, is that this idea of the star in the east pointing the way to where the Christ child lay has a really interesting story, because if we compare the nativity story of Jesus Christ born in a wooden structure surrounded by animals, now who does that sound like? It sounds to me a lot like Noah. And so if we think of this as uh, uh, looking at Jesus Christ as the second Noah, the savior of the world, just as Noah saved the world from the flood, so too Jesus would save the world from sin. And so we have this question: are there stars here on the deck of Noah's Ark, which for visual astronomy for the ancients would have matched to this story of a um, a oh, there we are, would have matched to this ancient story of a child in the manger. And I'm just going to now continue to just change the display by removing the constellation pictures and zooming in, and we'll stop this movement and we will center. Yeah, we're already centered here, and we're going to zoom in, and we'll steadily I'll try to stop that. And we can and so this is where we want to center, and we want to just continue to zoom in. And what we're seeing here is the the skies from with the viewed from a very dark sky. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the resolution. Instead of the current magnitude of 6, we'll change it to a small town where the magnitude is about 4, and we'll um, just give this a bit of a spin. What we wanted was that to be centered there, and now where have we got to? Well, so we just more of a look, um, and I'll just have to zoom out so that I can get this. Or we're not going to be able to do it from Sydney. We're going to have to go back to Jerusalem. So let's say we find the location and we'll return to Jerusalem. And so in the dark, and just once again um, looking at the um, constellations with the mythological figures, and we've moved it around a bit. So there we are. That's what we were looking at before. And what we're going to do is move Argo up till the deck of the Noah's Ark is at its highest point in the sky, and then we're going to center there, and we'll zoom in to, to see the deck of Noah's Ark. And with what we see here is this display. Our magnitude limits are set 4. And what we have here is this group of stars here is the deck of the ship. And it's a group of stars which, when you look at it in the sky, looks like a manger. So it's the story that I suggest is that the ancient source of the nativity myth of the star in the east and the three kings and Christ in the manger was this observation of the stars, very similar to how the Greeks had developed a whole range of stellar mythology.